What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Life by the Bow. If you guys are new here, we are a fishing / boating channel, so if you guys are into that kind of stuff, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. But today we are going to be talking about the power pole. Is it nonsense or an absolute necessity? So first things first, let's talk about the different models of power pole. They make the micro, which is the smallest power pole, obviously. You can put that on the back of a kayak, paddleboard, small skiff, whatever it may be. And then you have the sportsman, the pro, and then the blade. These are the blades. These are the top of the line power pole. These are the 8-foot edition. They also make the 10-footers. And basically, these ones are $2,000 a piece. And that $2,000 may seem a little ridiculous when you start to put things together in your head, especially when you have duals. So in this setup here, we're talking about $4,000. But one thing I can promise you is when you are paying that money for a power pole, you are not paying for just the power pole. You are paying for power pole's exceptional warranty. And I think that this is really what makes power pole above everybody else in the marine and boating industry, because they really stand behind their product. Anytime I've ever had an issue with any of my power pole products, this is now the 3rd boat that I've owned with power poles on the back of it, I get on the phone with them, we have a brief discussion, we diagnose the problem, they send me the new parts. One thing that I believe in is when a company is doing the right thing, I feel like it's my job to take care of them if they've taken care of me in the past. So, you know, I'm really happy using power pole products, and so far throughout the years that I've owned them, I've had nothing but exceptional service from them. So now we're gonna go ahead and talk about the use of the power pole, and I can promise you, after owning my first power pole micro for a short period of time, I found more ways to utilize that anchor than I could ever imagine. The first, most obvious one was being able to push a button and stop right there on a dime. I dealt with those little fiberglass anchor poles in the past, and though they work great, when you fish a lot like I do, being able to push that button versus pulling an anchor pole all day, it's a game changer. And if you guys don't fish as much as I am, or you're not on the water as much as I am, you probably won't be able to understand that. But for me, that was something that was tremendous. And I'll just go over some of the uses of being able to push that button and stop your boat on a dime, because I feel like if you're able to understand these things, you will really find the use and the importance behind these power poles. So say, for example, you and a buddy, you guys are out fishing, you're working a mangrove shoreline, you throw up a cast underneath the mangroves, you hook a fish, you push the button, you drop the power poles, and you stop right there at that point in time. Now, why is that important? Because you have wind, you have current, and I can promise you, wherever you caught that fish, your boat's position is going to completely change, and it's going to move off of that area where you caught that fish. So you want to be able to stop immediately, because that's going to give you the ability to make another cast right where you caught that fish without having to completely reset your boat. Fish have tails, they obviously swim away, they can move, so timing can be everything. But the convenience of pushing that button and stopping right there in that point in time is huge, and you will figure that out once you spend a lot of time on the water. Another way that these power poles are very applicable, another example, you're throwing the cast net, and as soon as you throw that cast net, you push the button, you drop the poles. That's going to prevent your boat from drifting over the top of your cast net or away from your cast net. And I can promise you, when you have a net full of bait, the last thing that you want to do is drift over the top. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is docking. And this is one that I absolutely love, because I'm very particular about my rub rails on my boat. I hate when they get dinged up. I hate when they get scratched up, because in my honest opinion, that's how you can really see a lot of wear and tear on a boat, is on the rub rail. So, however I can figure out how to keep that rub rail off the dock, I'm going to take the extra step and go ahead and keep that rub rail off of pilings or whatever it may be. But with my power poles, I don't have to worry about that. And the reason why I don't have to worry about that is because a lot of the times when I dock this boat, I'll just go straight up to the dock, just like this with my bow. And as soon as I get my bow right up to the dock, I'll just drop my power poles versus docking parallel. So what I'll typically do, I'll run one line off the bow of my boat, drop the power poles. That boat's not even touching the dock. I mean, it may be a small step from here to there onto the dock, but that's something that's huge. That's something that I love. And it just makes docking extremely convenient for me. Down here in the Keys, we go out to eat on the boat, the restaurants a lot. We go out for drinks, stuff like that. So however that we can just make our entire boating experience easier, we're definitely going to utilize those steps in order to make things easier. But in addition to that, it doesn't even have to be a bow up situation. You can still park parallel on a dock and just drop your power poles, especially in a dual setup just like this. And the fact that those dual power poles are not gonna allow your boat to swivel back and forth, same thing. That can just keep your boat right off the dock, so that way you don't have to worry about your rub rail getting banged up on it. I actually saw on social media the other day a bass boat parked up against a group of rocks, and those power poles just had the boat right there steady in between the dock and the rocks, because there was really big waves on the lake, and that boat wasn't touching the rocks nor the dock, so you don't have to worry about your boat getting banged up. Whenever I can use them in a docking situation, I'm always going to. So if you guys didn't know, we're actually from the Florida Keys. Therefore, we spend a lot of time at the Isla Mirada Sandbar. And if you guys aren't familiar with the Isla Mirada Sandbar, the reason why I mention it is because that sandbar specifically has a lot of current. I see it happen all the time. I literally saw it just this past weekend on Labor Day, and a boat was trying to get up into the sandbar. The current was pushing real hard. They ended up slamming into 2, 3, 4 boats. Now, on the other hand, if he had power poles, he could have just pressed the button. He could have stopped right there in place, and he wouldn't have to worry about banging into any boats. And like I've mentioned earlier, there's no such thing as brakes on a boat, but this is dang close to it. There's been so many times where I've been running into trouble where I was pulling up to a dock too fast, or same situation, I was pulling up at the sandbar and the wind and the current just started taking me uncontrollably. I just pressed the button, I stopped right there in my tracks, and I don't have to worry about banging into anything or banging into any boats. And in my opinion, that is something that is tremendous. So like I had mentioned, they have so many more great qualities other than fishing qualities. I just feel like it is so necessary to have these on the back of the boat if you're dealing with heavy currents, you're dealing with heavy winds, or you just want to dock your boat properly in a situation where it may not be favorable. So now that I've talked all this hype about the power pole, let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about the product itself. And there's actually 2 different ways to mount the power pole onto the boat. And you could either do it right here by the transom by drilling 4 holes straight through, or you can mount it via a bracket. I suggest the bracket because it's just the easiest and cleanest installation, and the less holes that you have to drill into your boat, obviously the better. They have all different types of mounting solutions, all different types of brackets for different boats, motors, jack plates. But basically the way that this one works, this 250 show, it's hung on an Atlas jack plate. And then this bracket is made specifically for the Atlas jack plate, where it's fixed by 2 screws or 2 bolts. And then once you have the bracket attached by those 2 bolts, the power pole attaches then to the bracket by the 4 bolts that are provided with the power pole itself. And that's what's so cool when you go ahead and you buy all these different components for the power pole. All the hardware is always included, so you don't have to go to the hardware store and buy all these different pieces and bolts and washers. Everything is provided, so that's really, really nice. The way the power pole actually works itself, they give you 2 remotes. One that's kind of like handheld that you can attach to your trolling motor remote. That's at least how I have mine. Then they also give you a dash switch, and on the dash switch you can actually switch between independent power poles. You can control the speed of the power poles, how fast they go up and down. And then if you really want to fine tune it, power pole, they actually have an app where you can actually update your power poles, you can control speeds, do all different types of cool things. So definitely a lot of cool software, a lot of cool features. So when we double tap on the remote, the power poles automatically go down. When we double tap up on the remote, the power poles go up. If we just sit there and hold it, they'll continue to go down until I stop. And then once I stop, they'll stay in that position. Same thing up, hold up. And then when I stop, they'll stop right there in that position. So that's huge, it's super easy. They also have a sensitivity setting. So once you get to the bottom, you can adjust the sensitivity for rock or soft bottom. Obviously the bracket, all these components of the motor itself are metal. The actual pole itself is fiberglass, which is great because you want that pole to be able to flex. That's gonna prevent it from breaking. The pump then has a hydraulic cylinder here where the hoses run inside of the transom. That's where you will need to drill 2 holes into the transom if you wish to run those hydraulic lines straight through the transom. That's at least how I did it. And then the hydraulic lines go all the way to the pump, which is basically the brain of the entire operation. Whenever you make a command on this remote, it goes straight to the computer in the pump, and that's where everything is controlled. And in this case, I have it mounted in my back hatch here, where it's nice, safe, and dry out of the elements. Last but not least, we're gonna talk about durability, which is huge. When you look at a power pole visually, it probably doesn't look like this thing is very strong, but I can promise you it is. You wouldn't see these things on the back of skiffs, bay boats, even some center consoles now, if they didn't live up to the test. Power pole actually has a video running up on plane. I believe it was just like a regular skiff or maybe like a small center console, and they dropped the power poles while the boat was up on plane. Absolutely nothing happened to them. They were perfectly fine. So I mean, if power pole's putting that kind of stuff out there, they're obviously very confident in their product, and I gotta tell you, I'm a believer. I've even had my own instances putting the boat in gear when the power poles were down. Also driving down the road one time, the remote was sitting in a hatch and something landed on top of the remote, and then the power poles went down and I was scraping my power poles along the street. Luckily not this boat, it was my old boat. But you know, after doing dumb stuff like that, after accidents, the power poles have still remained fine. Not some of my proudest moments, but hey, you know, things happen. I wish I had a video of that to show you guys because that would be pretty funny, but I'm not paid by Power Pole to say anything that I'm saying. I say it because I believe that if there's good people in the world doing good things, they should be appreciated publicly, and I feel like there's not enough of that nowadays. So it's definitely a product that's always stood up to my test, and I can be pretty harsh sometimes. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys are on the fence about getting power poles, hopefully this cleared some things up for you, whether you depicted if it was a good decision or not. If you guys are into fishing videos, boating videos, I can promise you this channel's for you. We post videos weekly. We don't do any of those crazy acts. We just try to provide the facts and just show people a good time. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff, I highly suggest that you subscribe. But for those of you that are subscribed, and if you made it this far in the video, we greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time.